is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Trans Wizard Harriet Porber and the bad boy Parasaurolophus. Parasaurolophus? I think it's that one. In this episode, well, this is certainly a book. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Krista for commissioning this episode. But also, I hate you. And no thank you for commissioning this episode. Y'all, so the question is, on everyone's minds is it good? No. It is not good. That said, is it fun? No. It is not really that much fun either. Oh my God. I am honestly pretty startled at my reaction, because I've been looking forward to this because it's such a bonkers concept. The whole thing. I have never read a Chuck Tingle book. Cards on the Table. I knew that he was a spoof writer, that he did parodies and things. I was aware that everything that he did was basically followed along the lines of your really stock romance tropes. And that was really all I knew. I wasn't prepared, and I don't know if this is indicative of his writing in general, or if this is the way he's decided to write this universe, but I was not prepared for there to be sentient motorcycles with human faces who are major characters. Look, I know that on the cover there's a picture of a motorcycle with the woman's head. And I guess I should have just taken that at face value, pun intended. But I didn't, my brain just did not interpret the image as a literal thing. And there are really one of the most glaring things, which is completely understandable, and I just have to mention it because I have to mention it, but I'm not holding Chuck Tingle to a standard that, obviously he is self-published. Everything he writes in probably a weekend, because he tries to stay really on topic, in terms of current events, and to release his stories as a bit of sometimes commentary on what's going on. So he has to churn this shit out really fast. However, even in the 50 pages that I read, there were so many typos. There were so many missing words, or words that were flipped. At one point it's supposed to say the wind roars, and it says the roars wind. They're backward. Just really glaring mistakes over and over. Misspellings. Lightning is spelled lightening, like you would lighten your hair or something. So that always is tough, because I just have a hard time. I mean, I think a lot of us, especially lately, we have been having a difficult time with focusing, because the world is a fucking trash fire. And once you get into the groove of consuming a thing, you want to lose yourself in it. And when I'm reading and I keep coming across things that don't make sense, it just shakes me out of it so badly. And I'm going to read y'all the first sentence of the book because I posted a screenshot of this. The first sentence doesn't make sense. And it was very difficult for me to get past this. Your opening line. Inspiration can be hard to find for a woman like me, but it's not without trying. No. It's not for lack of trying. It's not without trying. That's nothing. That's like half a sentence. So I sat there and reread that and I was just like, is it just me? Because sometimes I will misread a thing. That happens all the time. And then I go back and I'm like, oh God. Okay, now I get it. And what we've got here, the plot, is that basically the gimmick is that in this universe, spells are sort of like book publishing. So when you write a spell, it's not like, as much as this is meant to be like a bit of a parody novel, it's very, very loose. Like Tingle isn't trying to do a 1-to-1 ratio of Harry Potter to his romance novel. And in this universe, writing a spell is a completely different beast. It's not that you say one word and wave your wand. The incantations and spells that she is writing are like pages long. Later on, when we meet the hunky dinosaur, he's using like music magic. So we've got like bards in this universe and stuff. And so basically what has happened is that Harriet Porber wrote a hit spell a couple years ago. And really, she has an agent and everything. Like, she was able to make a good amount of money off it. It was something that went viral. And basically, she's been sort of like chasing that ever since. But always running up against a lack of inspiration and excitement over what it is that she's trying to write. She feels like she really needs to be coming from like an organic, emotionally driven place to write something that matters. So she's having a hard time focusing and is sort of like, she's got the equivalent of writer's block, but for spell work. And yeah, see, Kyle says, okay, for a goof book, that's a legitimately fascinating concept. I agree. Honestly, I would much rather this book be about that than the romance thing. But I understand why the romance thing is here. And honestly, I will say this. He does a really good job on that. It's a minefield. Writing romance is a bit of a minefield. And I think a lot of it makes sense in the way that he's chosen to approach this. And I have a lot highlighted that I'm going to read to you guys directly. So one of my favorite things about this book, because you guys know this, one of my favorite comedy bits is when things are just barely mispronounced. I find it so funny. It's not even like high humor. Like it doesn't even take much imagination. But I will lose my shit if something gets like, one of the jokes that I always go to as an example of this, if you guys have watched 30 Rock, they're trying to do a Janis Joplin documentary and they can't get the rights to any of her music. So they decide to market it as a fiction about a character named Janie Jorplin. I can't even say it without laughing. So what Chuck Tingle does a ton is just switch out like a letter in a person's name from the original series. And so Minerva McGonagall becomes Minerva. And she is Harriet's agent. And in this universe is not a magician. She isn't a wizard. She can't do magic. She is super fast by it. And she's really good at like marketing it and connecting with like the wizarding demographic. So she's good at her job, but she doesn't have magic, which I thought was a really interesting choice. So basically, Minerva, forgive me guys, every time I say everybody's name in this, I'm going to laugh, and you guys have to be ready for me to just, I'm not going to be able to get through it without, every time, I promise. Minerva is, she's trying to get in touch with Harriet about her progress on the newest, like, hot spell, the newest viral sensation. Hot to trot is the wording she keeps on using. And Minerva, like, she's got her boss breathing down her neck about it. So she just keeps on being like, hey, girl, you got anything yet? And eventually it becomes really clear that Harriet is like in this sort of block, and she probably needs to get out from where she is. So Minerva offers to let her use her family's vacation home that she inherited from her parents. And it's this cabin on the Tingle Islands in England. So she goes to she rents a car, evidently, and has to take a ferry to the islands. And on the ferry, I'm sorry guys if you can hear my phone, Rashawn is texting a storm at me right now. So on the ferry, she meets Bellatrix and Braco, two sentient motorcycles. I am unsure about all of this. I don't even know how to talk about it because it's just so weird. And like, this isn't really anything like remotely from the books. So this is just Chuck Tingle's own weirdness, I guess. Or maybe like, I know that people out there have written like Cars/fiction. So maybe he's meant to be sort of pointing at that a little bit. Yes, based on the like animated movie Cars, and they have car sex involving lots of like motor oil as lubricant and exhaust pipes. So, let's see. But I'm trying to find the spot where she meets them exactly. Here it is. At one, and it's just said. I think that's part of what got me off guard was like, this is just such an accepted thing in this universe that it's just stated as if they were regular people. At one of the tables sits two sentient motorcycles, gossiping loudly and laughing at some joke that's apparently absolutely hilarious because they are nearly choking on the giggles as they bubble up inside them. The motorcycles are clad in flashy designer clothes, a bright red coat hanging off of one of them, while the other boasts a puffy white and gold jacket. So this is what I mean when I say don't know how to talk about this. They are wearing clothing, and I don't know how to imagine that. I can't picture anything. And then, hey, one of the motorcycles calls over to me, her long dark hair framing her face in frizzy waves with a patch of stark white on the side. What's your name? Again, I wasn't ready for this motorcycle to have a woman's face and head, apparently, because she's also got hair. What? What? So, Bellatrix is basically being like, nice shoes, even though her shoes are like ratty and gross. I realize almost immediately that this living motorbike is clearly messing with me. Knowing that I'd be traveling a lot today, I picked out a comfortable pair of ratty old sneakers, slipping them on so that I could easily remove them on the plane when I caught a few extra hours of sleep. The motorcycle exchanges glances with her slightly lower horsepower blonde friend, but neither of them say anything more. So then we get a bit about how Harriet's from New York and she doesn't mind a fight. And she's about to like sort of walk away, and then she turns around and tries to engage them with just like, well, what are your names? I'm Delatrix, and this is Braco. Braco smiles mischievously. Her perfectly symmetrical face is framed by medium-length, stark blonde hair, while Delatrix's long, dark locks cascade down around her shoulders in fizzy waves. Shoulders! Her shoulders! Where? What? Highlighted by a streak of brilliant white. The chrome of their motorcycle bodies is perfectly crafted and beautifully maintained. The paint job of Delatrix features a white streak down her side to match the one on her head, while Braco's is mostly greens and grays. So, if that helps you guys, it did not help me, but if it helps you guys, I just needed to give you all the information that I had access to. Christina is saying motorcycle centaurs, and honestly, I would be more comfortable with that, but the cover feels like it's telling me how this is meant to be. And that's not what's going on the cover. So I'm not sure. There's no description of like the way that their bodies fit together with the machinery. It's never really mentioned. So if you want to go with centaurs and ignore the cover, normally I would be like, well, oftentimes the people who design covers don't actually like read the book or consult with the author. But Chuck Tingle's self-published, and I think that he makes his own covers, and so I feel like that's like done the way that he's thinking of it. But I don't know how that works. So, guys, this is so hard to talk about. So finally, after they continue to mock her about her shoes and sort of like giggle and nudge each other in this way that feels very like catty and mean girly, she goes off and gets into her car because the ferry is about to make it to land, and everybody is getting in their cars to get off the ferry. And she notices this like really flashy bright yellow car that there's no driver in it. So everybody winds up having to go around it, and it's a huge pain in the ass. It's only after I've pulled up on the main island that I glance in the rearview mirror and notice Braco and Delatrix finally rolling over to their ride, waving away the frustrated ferry workers who throw their hands up in frustration. "Why do you even need a car?" one of the big feet yells. "You're motorcycles." That's, as far as I know, a legitimate question. How do they get in their car? Because later, it's mentioned that they could just, we, being like the two characters in that scene, and one of them is Harriet, could just borrow Delatrix's car. So that implies that this is a car that a human being could drive. It's not like, specially equipped for a motorcycle to drive. Do they tow it? Is that how that... Could two motorcycles tow a car? I actually don't know if that's, like, possible. But who knows? So, Harriet heads over to the cabin, and she's already, like, as she's, like, crossing the island, really feeling a sense of peace, because this place is feeling very remote. A ton of trees, a lot of open space with no buildings, and the feeling of the woods is like really ancient. It just has the vibe of a place that has been standing for a long time. And she gets to the house, which I don't know if any of you guys can attribute any significance to this, but the address is 722 Gorb Road, which I don't know if that's anything, but I thought I would mention it. She goes into the cabin, and it's this like beautiful, very quaint place, fireplace, amazing view, and she's just sinking down onto the couch, really feeling like this is going to do the trick. I am feeling a sense of serenity here that I haven't been anywhere. I think that I will be able to like find the next hit spell here. And I'm going to read this part. I reach into my bag and pull out my wand, setting it on the table before me. Wizards need their wands to cast spells, unlike bards, who can simply sing or perform on a musical instrument to create magical effects, or warlocks, who can manifest their magical powers through a pact with some omnipresent author named Chuck. Which is called, by the way, meta magic, which is a pretty good joke, to be honest. I'm not even mad. So, she is about to get started on writing this spell, and all of a sudden she gets interrupted by this ear-splitting drumming. And she looks over, and the house that had previously been unoccupied right next to hers now has a car in front of it. Guess whose car? It's Bellatrix and Braco's yellow sports car out front. So she goes over there, and she is really in a frenzy at this point. She's so mad. And pounds on the door. They can't even hear her over the drums. Eventually, the music pauses. And it doesn't feel like it pauses because it's like in response to her. It's an accident. And then they happen to hear her. And eventually, there's like giggling and jokes inside. And then all of a sudden the door opens and she is about to go off because she's expecting, I keep wanting to say Draco or Bellatrix, Braco or Bellatrix. She's expecting one of them. What I receive could not be any farther removed. There in the doorway is a tall, breathtakingly handsome dinosaur, shirtless and chiseled in all of his muscular glory. He's covered in tattoos, giving his scaly green canvas an even more exotic edge, and his eyes are wide and yellow. His face is covered in a perfectly timed 5 o'clock shadow, not long enough to be a beard, but nicely emphasizing his dark features and strong jaw. He's a mammal. How? His hair is long and dark, providing an angsty gothic frame to his handsome mug. He appears to be a Parasaurolophus. I am never going to be confident that I'm saying that correctly, so we're just going to call him a dinosaur. Hi is all I can manage to say, the word falling limply from my mouth. I'm Snape. I'm Snape, the prehistoric creature says in a thick British accent. And you must be Harriet. Harriet, I correct him. Right. The bike said they met you on the boat, huh? So, this conversation, to sum it up, is her stammering and awkward because she's just so stunned at his beauty. And him eventually making a remark to signal that he's aware he's having this effect on her, and that he has this effect on a lot of women, and he's very used to it, which sort of snaps her out of it a little bit. And she finally is like, you're making a lot of noise. What are you doing in there? And I love this moment, you guys. Snape's eyes make their way up and down my body, checking me out. I'm sorry, he suddenly blurts, noticing my appalled expression. I'm just written this way. What? I question, confused. It's a trope in romance, the dinosaur continues to explain. The more of an asshole I am in this part of the book, the better the payoff is when you change me later on. I have no idea what you're talking about, I reply, shaking my head from side to side. It's okay. The Parasaurolophus, whatever, continues. Just as long as it's clear, this is fiction. In the real world, you should probably just break up with someone who acts like this, or even quit their class. So at this point, she realizes that part of the reason that she's so stuck on staring at his face is that he looks familiar. "Oh my God," I blurt. "Are you Snape Resmore, the bard from 7-Inch Nails?" OMG, you guys. 7-Inch Nails. And that comes up a whole lot of times. So, eventually, she just straight up asks him to turn it down. And he straight up says no. "I need to know if the beat's any good before we start writing to it, and I won't be able to tell unless it's really slamming. You came out to this place for quiet. I came out here to be loud. Nobody cares about the noise until you showed up. Can't we reach a compromise?" "Afraid not," the dinosaur bard replies flatly. "Not yet, anyway. This is still the part of the story where I'm a huge asshole." "Why do you keep saying that?" I blurt. "What story?" "I'm a magic bard, remember? I create magical spells that draw on meta-awareness of the Tingleverse." "So?" I continue. "So, I'm well aware this is a bad boy romance novel and I've got a job to do. Trust me, I don't love acting this way either. I guess it's just important to remember, just because a fictional character is a jerk, it doesn't mean the author is too. Likewise, if a fictional character is sweet and awesome, their author could still be really awful and bigoted." "Why are you telling me this?" "I'm not telling you. I'm telling the reader," the dinosaur informs me. So, this is the kind of thing that could get really old, but it's very carefully sprinkled in. It's not too bad. I really think it works well, honestly. And it's these moments that I sort of live for. The little drops of, like, reminder of what this actually is. Because despite the names, like I said, this universe doesn't bear any resemblance to the Harry Potter universe. So it's easy, despite the names, to like kind of forget what we're doing. And so when he does that, it sort of brings it back a bit, you know? Oh my God. Krista, I just got a text from Chris Tex. Oh my God, Krista, I'm just realizing you texted me the other day and I didn't reply. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, sweetie. I'm so bad at that. Chris just texted me, "Did someone actually pay you real ass American money to cover a Chuck Tingle book?" Oh God. So eventually Bellatrix comes to the door and is like, "He has work to do, sweetie," and slams the door in her face. And she goes back to her cabin and she calls the cops. And the cop comes to his door, and he's a sheriff, actually, and he's a unicorn. The sheriff, a handsome purple unicorn, pulls right up next to the bright yellow sports car, climbing out of his ride, then taking in this exotic vehicle as though it's some strange craft from another planet. Eventually, he makes his way over to Snape's cabin door, but thanks to the crashing drums, the sheriff ends up having the exact same problem that I did. Nobody can hear him knocking. So, eventually, she sees the conversation between Snape and the sheriff, and it becomes really clear that whatever Snape's doing, he's winning the sheriff over completely. They are like joking and laughing together after a moment, and she's getting really frustrated watching from her window. To my dismay, Snape suddenly opens his mouth and begins to sing, the magical incantation short and to the point. I can see waves of bardic energy emitting from his throat in sizzling vapors, washing across the unicorn sheriff's face. Soon enough, the unicorn is nodding along with the dinosaur, in a fit of feverish enthusiasm. So, the sheriff comes to her door. He's got a wide-brimmed hat and a silvered hair that pushes out from under it ever so slightly, as well as a large, brilliant white mustache. The unicorn's horn pops out through a hole in the middle of his hat, twinkling under the light. The guy looks like everything a big city girl like me would imagine a lawman from these parts to look like. Oh. Does he? Okay. Well, Noted. So, he starts off with, as long as you're not here to drink my blood, you'll fit in just fine around here. I'm Sheriff Thompson. I don't know if there's any, joke there, but I don't think so. Snape's gonna quiet down over there now. I gave him a warning and told him to take a break, but most days he's allowed to make noise from noon until sundown. Maybe not so damn loud, though. So, Harriet is like, well, what the fuck? I was like, that's all I asked for to begin with. I didn't want to have to involve this guy. I shouldn't have had to. So she goes back to writing, and she's feeling very different now than when she first got to the cabin. She's agitated and she can't get back into the headspace that she was before. So she looks at the clock and realizes maybe I should go eat something. And she has brought groceries, but she decides to go out to this little restaurant. Let's see, Captain Orion's Cove. It's a seafood place. So she goes to have lunch, and the place is empty except for her in the afternoon. And there is an older woman who comes by to take her order, and they chit chat, and it is revealed that Snape is a huge tipper. And there's even a sort of hint that he found out this waitress's daughter was sick and gave her a ton of money to help take care of it. Of course, finding this out from somebody else, this warms Harriet's heart a little bit. And she can't reconcile this story with the guy that she has just met. She orders the cod spaghetti, which is just one of those little things that really shows how much you can make a place feel like a completely alien land by just doing small things that really wouldn't matter to a lot of people. Cod spaghetti. Look, I understand seafood primavera. I understand shrimp Alfredo, right? Fettuccine. But when you just say cod spaghetti, I stop cold. I don't. Is it with red sauce? I don't like that. What are we doing? Ugh. Anyway. So, she finishes her meal and she's feeling at peace with the world. The restaurant has this amazing view. There's nobody else there. It's very quiet. She's really enjoying herself. She goes out to her car and all of the tires have been slashed. And she knows that it has to be Bellatrix. She's just who else would give a shit about her enough to do this, right? So she sets up, she goes back inside, gets the waitress to call somebody who's going to take care of it in the morning when they come in. And in the meantime, she has to just walk home. And it's miles away. So she starts heading home. And at one point, "Where you headed?" calls the familiar motorcycle voice of Bellatrix from her yellow sports car. "You shouldn't be out here walking in those fancy, expensive shoes." "Yeah, they're too cute," Braco yells, piling it on. I stop dead in my tracks, turn to the car and open my mouth, ready to launch into a scathing diatribe, but before the words have a chance to tumble out, Bellatrix hits the gas hard. The next thing I know, the motorcycles are rocketing off down the road, their roaring engine drowning out the sound of my shouts as they disappear around the corner and off into the distance. So, she finally arrives home. She's in a bit of a mood, and she hears Snape playing the guitar, and it's a nice acoustic guitar at sunset on the lake, and she recognizes that at any other time, this would be a delightful thing that she welcomes. But instead, right now, him continuing to make noise of any kind, she just can't. She just can't do it. So, as she puts it, I allow myself to go full New Yorker. And she runs down to the dock where he's playing, and she grabs the guitar and she throws it into the lake. And later on, she finds out that this was, like, it had belonged to somebody. He got it for $15,000. And she feels kind of mortified about it, but he's so rich, it just doesn't even really matter that much. And when she says, I'm sure you can afford another one, he says, you're right, goes inside and comes back out with another guitar and begins to play again. You promised there would be no more music today. No more loud music. That's not what I heard. That's what I told Sheriff Thompson. You can call him if you'd like. So eventually she has to, like, admit, because he can see the look on her face, that she's actually liking what he's playing. And he begins to record it. And let's see. But I'm trying to find the... Oh, yeah, this is a weird moment. He has her connect her phone to, like, the Bluetooth and play a song, and it's way too loud. And I didn't really get the point of this. I don't know if it's just meant to, like, set up something for later to let us know that it's, like, a super loud speaker on the yacht that he has tied up here, or what. But I don't know. Other than that, I don't know what the point of this moment is. So, she says, my eyes wander across the gorgeous yacht. Just how rich are you? I finally ask. Pretty rich, Snape informs me. I didn't really earn it, though. I was written into incredible wealth by Chuck Tingle, the author. You can't really just be a bad boy in books like this. You've got to be a billionaire bad boy. It's kind of toxic, actually. And she again is just like, I don't know what you're talking about. So this is when she brings up her tires being slashed. And she basically accuses Bellatrix outright, to which he's like, were there motorcycle tracks? Like, why do you think that? And she's just kind of like, I just know that's who it was. No, I didn't see any tracks, I'll admit. But that's definitely who it was. And he says, I can talk to them and see what I can find out. I'm really sorry they did that to you. I'm really sorry someone did that to you. If they actually did it, I'll send them packing. So, eventually he says, can I make it up to you and take you out on a date? And she says, no, thank you, and goes back to her cabin. So Minerva wakes her up in the middle of the night because she had forgotten about the time change to talk about whether or not Harriet has a brand new spell ready yet. To which Harriet's like, it's been exactly 1 day. Oh my God, give me a fucking break. And she finds out from Minerva that she and Snape used to be like childhood friends. We grew up spending our summers on the island. Obviously, his family was much wealthier than mine, making the trip from Bristol and all, but they'd be out there for months at a time to make sure all that travel was worth it. Wow, was he always this way? Not at all. He was the most caring kid on the island. When the others would pick on me, he'd always have my back. We were best friends back then. That's not the dinosaur I met, I reply. You know, the two of you actually have a lot in common. He's a spellcrafter like you are, just in a different way. Plus, you're both trans, Minerva offers. Wait, really? I blurt. You didn't know that? That's a huge part of his lyrics. He's trans and proud. Huh, is all I can think to say in response. I never really paid attention to the words, I guess. Anyway, when the band was coming up, he stopped taking trips to the island. In fact, I'm fairly certain the cabin was sold to someone else. After Snape hit it big with 7-inch nails, he bought the place right back. By then, his whole personality had changed. It's like he was constantly trying to prove something to the rest of the world. That's oddly sentimental, I reply. Well, it's Snape in a nutshell. He's a little rough around the edges, but there's a kind heart buried deep down in there somewhere. A little rough? So at this point, Minerva asks if she's going to go on this date. And Harriet's like, I wasn't gonna, but I'm kind of starting to rethink that. And she gets off the phone and she is about to get to work because now she's awake and there's a knock at the door. And she goes and she sees Bellatrix standing there awkwardly, shifting her weight on and off her kickstand. I don't know how I missed that line the first time. Her kickstand, oh my God. She looks disheveled and messy, her dark makeup slightly running beneath her eyes. What do you want? To talk. This early in the morning? Don't you mean this late at night? I now notice the motorcycle is utterly drunk off her ass. Oh, and by the way, in this universe, it's chocolate milk that gets you drunk. There's no mention of alcohol anywhere in this. I don't know why. It's a weird thing, but it's like funny. But it's only chocolate milk. Like if somebody's walking around with a bottle of it, that is a sign that they're basically walking around with like a bottle of tequila. Like it's a bad scene, right? I now notice the motorcycle is utterly drunk off her ass, blah, blah, blah. Bellatrix has been up all night tossing back chocolate milk from dusk till dawn. Just open the fucking door. You should go home. I should go home? I was here way before you showed up, sweetie. I've been with Snape for 2 years, and it was going just fine until you came by with your shitty shoes and your bad hair. Okay, well, I don't know what to tell you. Tell me you'll stop talking to Snape. So, they go back and forth a minute. And finally, it ends with Harriet being like, I'm going to go out with him, fuck you. And shutting the door in Bellatrix's face. And Bellatrix stops. She begins to roll away, stopping suddenly when she sees a large rock on the ground. I watch as the motorcycle tilts down to pick it up, turning over the hard surface in her hand. Okay, so it's mentioned that she has a hand. So I don't know if that's a human hand. I would assume so. So maybe it is just like, the centaur thing. And not what it looks like on the cover. She begins to glance back and forth between the rock and my bedroom window, clearly considering a number of options. And then she just winds up throwing the rock down and rolling off. So, there's a sort of exhilaration that comes from this confrontation. And Harriet sits down and she begins to pour out this new spell that is basically, it says, a spell for what you need when you need it. And when her tires got slashed, she was sort of thinking to herself, if she had just brought her fucking wand, she could have fixed the tires in like a second. But she had left it on her desk at the cabin when she decided that she needed to get something to eat, and she just got up and left. And if she had had a spell like this, it would be like, the room of requirement that follows you around. And her wand would have just wound up in her purse. So she writes this. She's feeling really good about it. And eventually she stands up and leaves. And there's no real mention of her having sent this to anybody, forwarding it. And there's no this is my prediction. I feel like probably Bellatrix is going to steal her laptop or do something to sabotage the spell that she's created because she feels so good about it, and that can't last, right? So Krista says, Bellatrix, no. She goes outside and she hears this weird sound, and it turns out that it's Snape cutting firewood, shirtless again, of course. She asks if he ever wears a shirt, and he just kind of ignores her. And then she mentions Minerva, and he gets sort of sentimental about it. And they talk a little bit about each of their creative processes and how he has also been feeling a bit of a block lately. And the song that he played yesterday that she seemed to like, he says that he's been stuck on that for years, that he has had this general melody, but anytime he tries to put lyrics or anything over it, it doesn't work. So she, at this point, says, How about I give you those wizard's block pointers over dinner tonight? And he takes her up on it. And when she asks like how they're going to get there because her car is still being repaired, he says that they can take Bellatrix's car. And she's like, I'm not setting foot in her fucking car. So he basically is like, all right, I'll buy a car. It's no problem. And she's like, what? Again, flashing his money around. When he comes to pick her up, he has a lime green Lamborghini. And she has a moment of just like, what the fuck? And then he starts laughing and is like, no, I'm just kidding. I just got this as a joke. And it turns out it's a rental, but it's still like $5,000 a day for just a bit of a joke. And they actually get into a gorgeous black Jaguar. And they head out to the same restaurant and they get the same waitress. The thing is that the waitress, it's much busier tonight because when she went, it was lunchtime. And so they don't really have a lot of business that time of day. But at dinner, it gets really packed. And there's a couple of guys there who have been drinking a little bit too much chocolate milk, if you know what I mean. And they're starting to get a bit fresh. And at one point, one of them grabs her arm as she's walking by, the waitress. And as he does it, he like knocks his glass over and yells at her like, look what you made me do. And Snape has had his eye on these two dudes from the moment they walked in the door. And when they pull this, it's like this immediate fight where he just gets up, decks both of these guys, picks them up and throws them over his shoulders because they are both unconscious, and then carries them outside and dumps them on like the front porch of the restaurant. And there's a real like a bit of dialogue here about the fact that like him fighting is honestly like sort of questionable behavior, but he has to constantly straddle that line because he's meant to be a bad boy, but also have a heart of gold. You've got to remember that bad boy characters walk the line between appropriate and inappropriate. It's for the readers just as much as it is for Gobby. Where did you learn to fight like that? The pubs back home can get a little rowdy on occasion. I shake my head. Snape's methods were direct and refined. Not a single bit of energy wasted while he disposed of his targets. This wasn't a fight carried out by a dinosaur who had accidentally fallen into one or two drunken brawls over the years. You were way too good at that. I'm a wizard. I notice small things. Fighting is in your blood. I can feel the meta layers of reality vibrating, so I know we're on track. As a bad boy character, this kind of thing is bound to happen, and you're bound to be both disgusted and impressed. The thing is, this isn't just a romance, it's also a parody, and a loose one. Chuck has very literal understanding of the source material. I guess what I'm saying is, while romance novels tend to peddle the idea that toxic bad boys can change, in reality, you probably want to avoid someone like me. I'd be a shitty boyfriend and a shitty professor. A shitty professor? What are you talking about? Sorry, let's get back to the fight. So, yeah, I really enjoy these little bits. I really do. It feels like Chuck getting a little breather for himself and being able to just kind of directly write to us, you know, and just be like, hey, what's up, guys? Look, I know this is like questionable, and here's the whole reason why I'm doing it. Okay, back to the story. And yet, despite that being like obviously what's happening, it doesn't feel intrusive because everything about this is so wild that in some ways that's like the most grounded part of everything, you know? So, moments later, our food arrives. Me and my handsome green companion immediately dig in. The stress of the day's conflict building us up to a state of ravenous hunger. The meal is absolutely incredible. She got the cod spaghetti again. She did. It's there. It says so. So, at this point, he says that she's different than the women that he usually meets. And she asks, how so? And he's like, you don't really seem to like me. And she's like, yeah, I do. And he's like, well, every time I sort of reach out for your hand, you pull away from me. And she realizes that he's right, and she can't really explain that. You've already got a girlfriend, I remind Snape. 2 of them, actually. Bellatrix and Draco? They're not my girlfriends. They're my motorcycles. They're more than that, I continue. So, like, it's really weird for him to say that if they are like centaurs, because then it feels like they're people. And for him to say that they're just motorcycles feels really gross. I'm not interested in something like that, I let him know. I've got nothing against it, and I've done it before, just not right now. What if I sent them home tomorrow? Snape questions. I laugh. Then maybe I'd consider a second date. Maybe. The thing is, you're not going to do that. You're right, the dinosaur finally replies. The story's not even halfway over. It can't be that easy. And then there is somebody standing next to their table, and they look up, and it's Draco. Bellatrix needs you, the motorcycle blurts, her eyes frantic and her stark blonde hair a tangled, damp mess. She's in the hospital. And that is the end of chapter 5. We have reached our 50-page limit, folks. So, yeah, so that's what's happening. I fully expect that there's going to be some other weird shit that comes up that, like, is just part... Because, you know, the whole... Krista says, no. The whole thing that is really catching me the most off guard about this is how openly practiced magic is, that there's not, like, a hidden world. There is, like, a different demographic to market to. But it's not like they have a secret, you know, there's no mention of Diagon Alley and like just, there's no mention of muggles versus wizards. Like the word muggle never comes up. I don't know how much of that is because that stuff is literally copyrighted. I don't really know how far you can go with referencing something if you are also like selling the thing. You know what I mean? I don't really know what the rules are there. So I don't know if that had any like bearing in the way that he chose to write this or not. But the fact that a unicorn can be sheriff, it feels almost like what we've done is we've like stayed in the Harry Potter universe, fast forwarded like 200 years to the point where everything is out in the open and there's no more hidden universe. And also evolution has started to happen along with like weird transfiguration mistakes. And now we have sentient motorcycles. You know, it feels like the kind of thing that, you know, the sentient motorcycles really do feel like a transfiguration gone bad that could not be undone at St. Mungo's. And we just got stuck this way. So, yeah, I don't really know what to expect further. I mean, obviously I expect that these two are going to fuck, that Bellatrix is going to continue to be a petty jelly bitch. I don't know, like, if he's going to do the same thing with Draco and try and have Draco, like, redeem herself in a way and be less terrible. I don't know. And it's interesting that she's decided to skip over Voldemort as a concept, or he has decided to skip over Voldemort as a concept altogether, go straight to Snape and parodying Snape, but still including Bellatrix and having her be obsessed with Snape instead of Voldemort, you know, because it feels very much like that kind of energy, but just directed in a different place. And I really want to know why Chuck Tingle wants to always include dinosaurs. Because this is not the first time that's come up. Is it just because those romance novels exist and are so, like, successful that he is just like, oh, I gotta do that. That's bonkers. Because I could sort of understand that feeling, you know? Yeah, I mean, is there anybody in the audience who's read any of his other stuff? I can't remember. There was one that came out that had like, it was involving like a politician that had recently done something stupid, but I can't remember what that one was. Krista says he does stuff with Bigfoot too. Okay. And there were some Bigfoots on the ferry. So that makes sense. He writes really short stories mostly, but the titles are hilarious. Yeah, that's like really the thing. It feels like the book is just superfluous to the title, to be honest. And I feel that way about a lot of his stuff. Like, it's just, how absurd can we make this title? Which is a pretty fun game, to be honest. Kyle says, no one I know has actually read A Tingle. We all just laugh at his funny covers. Rowan says he does a lot of politically topical stories immediately after the events. Yeah, I was talking about that earlier. So that's part of why they're riddled with errors, is because he just churns them out so fast. Krista says, Hunter Dentist pounded in the butt by Cecil the Handsome Unicorn. Oh, God. Pharma Bro pounded in the butt by T-Rex comedian Bill Murky and a clan of Triceratops rappers trying to get their album back. These have audiobooks. I was noticing this one didn't have an audiobook, and I sort of assumed that none of his books had audiobooks, but that's interesting. Maybe it just takes a while to get around to that part. Wow. All right, well, I don't really know what more to say about this. I feel like I'm pretty much done. I really feel like there's something that I had forgotten to talk about that's weird about this universe. But I do really like the idea. The other spell, by the way, that she had written originally that went viral was something bubbles. Let me see if I can find that. Boobless Morphus. And it says it was nothing more than a simple collection of magical bubbles containing various scenes from the caster's life, but it was easy to personalize, and the scroll soon went viral. So that's interesting. You know, I wonder how that works. Like, it sounds like it's the kind of thing where it's equivalent to getting dunked in somebody's pensieve, but only for a particular moment, and that they can view it in the bubble instead of like actually being plunged into it, which is interesting. Oh God, Krista shared one more. Slammed in the butt by Donald Trump's attempt to avoid accusations of plagiarism by removing all facts or concrete plans from his Republican National Convention speech. Wow, if you guys are watching the chat, that title is a paragraph long. Ooh, good. We're just going for it. All right. Well, guys, let's see. When's the next episode? I think there's only 3 in total. Yeah. So the next one's Tuesday and then Friday. So, I hope that you guys will join me for those also. And buckle up. That's all I got to say about that. Thank you guys again so much. And thank you to Krista. You absolute monster. Upset Trump supporter pounded in the butt by his search for meaning now that his bigoted cult leader has been voted out. Well, he found his search for meaning by attacking the Capitol building. Yay! Pounded in the butt by the Capitol building. How about that? That's next. Alright, guys, thank you again so much. I will be seeing you next week. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.